What I found most interesting was that I didn't know that it kind of started to thank allies and thank Amsterdam, you know, that people could be themselves. I think that was most interesting. I thought was most interesting.
The most interesting thing was the history of Pride, but also the part before Pride. So with all the protests in the Netherlands, especially Pink Saturday in Amersfoort, that was really eye-opening because I don't know a lot of the history in the Netherlands. I know the American part, most of it, but I don't know a lot about it, the history in the Netherlands. So that was the part where I learned the most.
I think the history line from Pink, the start from Amsterdam Pride and Pride in general, the history line, like getting started from small Pride groups, growing bigger to more commercial, and then also the point of pinkwashing. What is pinkwashing? For who is Pride? It started me like questioning things. Yeah.
All right. So my name is Anna. I am standing here in front of you as an academic. I'm assistant professor at the University of Amsterdam, but I am also an Amsterdammer. I'm sure that you have met people like me. We are proud of our city. I was born and raised here and have lived here most of my life. Like many Amsterdammers, I ring my bell when I see tourists on the bicycle path. I yell, I am loud. I'm a loud person. We are a loud people, right? And I've lived here all my life, except I think a year in San Francisco, and I did my PhD somewhere else, but this is the city of my heart. When I was 11 years old, I was at the first Pride. In 1996 was the first Pride, and I was then 11. And I was standing there looking at all the boats go by. And I was standing there with my friends, and I felt a sense of sisterhood, brotherhood, like a sense of community and belonging when I was standing there. Not just as a person, but also as an Amsterdammer. I really felt that my city was a city that I could be proud of because it was hospitable to queer people. This was a place where they could be themselves. And I was raised by two hippies who came from very conservative backgrounds, so they fled where they came from and they came to Amsterdam. And they raised me to believe or see Amsterdam as this liberal city. So as a 11-year-old girl, I stood there and was inspired. And ever since then, I have been fascinated with Pride. Every year, I read all the newspaper articles. I talk with people about Pride, and I think the topic of Pride is fascinating for many reasons, both academic and personal. Everybody has an opinion about Pride. Some people love it, some people hate it. People criticize it for a host of different reasons, and that's what I want to talk with you about today. What actually is Pride? What does it mean? For who is Pride? And of course, when you talk about the meaning of a particular topic, you also think about criticism. What do we love about it? What do we hate about this particular topic? And in the last couple of years, one thing that I study quite a lot is pinkwashing. So that's also something that I would like to talk about because it is linked to Pride. Right? Each year, as there are various corporate sponsors, but also much more municipalities and other governmental organizations who are taking part in Pride. So the question is, how legitimate is their sponsorship? Should they be a part of this event? And that's also something that I would like to talk to you about today. However, if we really want to understand the meaning of Pride, we have to think back with how Pride started. So I have a little introduction where we talk about the history, and then I will delve a little bit deeper into this particular case. I have to, before we start, kind of warn you that this is definitely a work in progress. I'm not as far with this analysis as I was hoping to be. So I'm really curious what you guys think about Pride. What is the meaning of Pride for you? How do you see inclusion and exclusion during Pride? So at the end, I have like 15 minutes or so where I'm hoping we have some time to talk about this as a group. Feel free, of course, to participate, but if you rather remain silent, that is, of course, also possible. All right, so let's start off with the history of Pride. Now, I'm sure you all have seen pictures of the Stonewall uprising in 1969. This was a 6-day uprising where LGBTQIA plus people fought back against police brutality. So it was a very meaningful event in LGBTQIA plus advocacy, even though, of course, it did not start at Stonewall. It has happened, or there have been a lot of events before that were very meaningful for gay rights. This was a kind of a watershed moment that changed things, and afterwards, they say things have never been the same. It was also officially kind of the birth of Pride, because this establishment, the Stonewall Bar, was a gay bar. It was on Christopher Street. And 1 year after this uprising took place, you could see Christopher Street Liberation Day. So this was in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in San Francisco, and then a year after that, it also came to the EU or Europe, and then it was West Berlin, Paris, London, I think, and after that it kind of reached around the globe. So now each year, the 20th of June was the actual day where Stonewall took place. So now at the end of June, or sometimes especially on the 28th of June, you see a lot of different Pride events around the year. However, in the Netherlands, there wasn't a Pride in this time. The first big manifestation took place in 1977, so quite some years after. Now the reason for this was, at the time the COC was already quite impactful action group then, and they felt that gay men and lesbian women did not have to express their sexual orientation through demonstration. They felt that they wanted to reach or make change in a more subtle way, kind of behind the scenes, and they didn't really support this type of action. However, of course, as you know, this has changed. The first, the largest, and actually one of the first demonstrations or large demonstration about LGBTQIA plus rights took place in 1977. So there were smaller demonstrations before this, but this was the real first massive one. This was not organized by the COC, by the United League of Lesbians, I think, and they did not target a domestic issue, but they were, it was about an expression of international solidarity with the fight against Anita Bryant. Does anybody know who this is? I see some people nodding. So she was a beauty queen turned singer turned she was also involved with the orange juice, like she was the Florida citrus representative. So she was really against gay people teaching. So she didn't want any gay teachers because she said, I'm a Christian and I don't want my children exposed to gay people, because she was afraid that it would be catching, right? So that she would turn, gay teachers would turn children gay. So what then happened was the LGBTQ community, both in the States but also here, came into revolt against this. And although Anita didn't really want this to happen, it wasn't her goal, but she was a really positive force for LGBTQIA plus liberation, because she galvanized, kind of brought groups together and helped them to become more organized. So they had all these Anita like bumper stickers. There was a screwdriver is a cocktail made of orange juice and vodka. So all over the States, the LGBTQIA plus people, they boycott orange juice, and then they had the Anita Bryant screwdriver, which was made with apple juice, and all of these funds were put together into further emancipation struggles for LGBTQIA plus people. So I think this was kind of an interesting fact that Anita was partly responsible for bringing large LGBTQIA plus manifestations to Amsterdam. Ooh, I have a nice picture here, but I just need to refresh this page. So, as you probably know, so let me get my train of thought back. Yes, so after this first manifestation, every year there was a large demonstration for LGBTQIA+, or gay rights as they still called it at that time. The first couple of them were in Amsterdam. In 1979, they actually used the term Pink Saturday and have been using that ever since. In 1982, they went to Amersfoort. Now this is, in the beginning it was organized in more liberal spaces, right? And the people who were organizing this event, they wanted to have a real impact. They wanted to have an effect in a different way than they could if they had this demonstration in Amsterdam. Because there are people, they weren't really shocked. If they saw two men kissing, they had seen it before, right? So they wanted to go somewhere where there would be a confrontation in a certain way, like a clash of values. They wanted to have an effect. So they went to Amersfoort in 1982. Now Amersfoort is very close to the Bible Belt. Very brave choice of this group. And this is a picture of this day. As you can see, there's lots of police there, but there are also lots of local people who were very unhappy that this happened. So you have to see that these were very often gay people who lived in the bigger cities, and then they hired buses and they all came to Amersfoort, and the buses came out in 3 different places, and then they marched to a center event where there would be like a public podium and there would be people dancing and singing, right? So that was what they wanted to achieve. But what happened is during these marchers, they were accosted by the locals who chanted "death to gays," which of course, yeah, I don't have to give an evaluation about how terrible it is, because I think we all share that. They threw eggs, they threw live maggots. So the locals were really, I saw a documentary about this day, and they kind of said, we've never seen or heard about anything like this. And because it was very much frowned upon in the church as something that's dirty, as unethical, they felt, why are you coming here to shove this in our faces? We don't want you here. And it was a terrible day where a lot of the people who were slotted to perform, they decided against it because they were afraid they would be shot or there would be violence. And at the end of this day, there was one manifestation or this one event still in a cultural center, so that was indoors. And this cultural center was surrounded by the locals who banged their hands on the window shouting "death to gays." Afterwards, people were advised by the police to leave in groups to their cars, but still, and also the police had to escort them. This is in 1982, right? So it's not ancient history. It's not very long ago. 5 people ended up in the hospital, 1 blind, like some with permanent injuries because of this day. So of course this is all terrible, but they had an effect. After that, all the Pink Saturdays were received in a different way from the municipalities. They received a lot more support from the government. And so even though it was probably a very traumatic day for the people there, it was an impactful day, and I think it changed things for the better. I think there's a really beautiful documentary about this called Andere Tijden. It is in Dutch. I have a little fragment, if we still have time at the end, that I would like to show you, but I would like to recommend it to everybody. You can see it online. I have it on my last slide, so you can take a look at this. But this is Pink Saturday, right? So this was always organized at the end of June in remembrance of Stonewall. But then you have a different type of LGBTQIA+ event, Amsterdam Pride. Now, this was where I was probably standing somewhere there. This is Amsterdam Pride. Amsterdam Pride is a different beast, so to speak. Amsterdam Pride was started by Siep de Haan and Huub Verwij, and they were 2 Amsterdam business people who started Gay Business Amsterdam. And what they wanted is not necessarily to demonstrate. They wanted to have an apolitical event where they celebrated freedom, where they celebrated LGBTQIA plus people and also the allies that help them, like they said, feel safe in Amsterdam. Because the first theme of the first Canal Pride was "Thank you, Amsterdam." So that's why also they called it Amsterdam Pride. It wasn't called Gay Pride in the beginning, it was called Amsterdam Pride. The organizing party, they also didn't mean it as a remembrance of Stonewall, but they chose actually August to organize it because statistically then it's the best weather here, right? So they wanted to have lots of people to come here. They wanted to restore the image of Amsterdam as the gay capital of Europe, because these were all businessmen, business people together, and a lot of them, they owned queer establishments, gay bars, gay bookstores, various different stores. So they wanted to get more gay people to Amsterdam. That was the start of why this began. Also because in 1998, there was going to be the Gay Olympic Games in Amsterdam. There was not a lot of enthusiasm for that, so they wanted to build enthusiasm for that event. And the idea was they would hold it 3 years until the Olympic Games were there, and then they would stop. But of course, it was such a successful event that it became bigger and bigger and bigger through the years. Now, of course, the Canal Parade is seen as the highlight, but there are lots of other events. There's lots of parties. There is, like this, of course, is also associated with Pride, but there are demonstrations, there are marches. The Canal Parade is not the only thing that is there, but it is definitely considered the highlight. Now, I want to give a brief overview of the different organizations who have organized Pride since. So Gay Business Amsterdam with Huub Verwij and Siep de Haan, they started this, but Siep de Haan was the front person or the spokesperson, and they often had a row with the Amsterdam municipalities because for various reasons that I will not go into. But because of that, in 2005 or 2006, in May, they said, we are not going to do it anymore. And of course, it's supposed to take place in August. So they scrambled and they were able to give the event to a different foundation, Pro-Gay, and they took care of this event until 2013. Irene Hemelaar and some of her buddies were not really into the way Pro-Gay was doing things, so they started a separate foundation, and then that was the foundation Gay Pride Amsterdam. They have been doing it since 2014, and they have been joined by Queer and Pride Amsterdam in 2023. So this is, of course, is still the same organization, but they're doing it together with Queer Amsterdam. Now, through the years, a lot of things have changed, right? Especially during this period where Pro-Gay was managing the event. In the beginning, it's almost only gay establishments, like gay bars and places like that who had a boat. But it became more expensive to take care of all the associated costs, and they did, of course, get some money from the municipalities, but not enough to really cover the costs for toilets, additional police, and all those various things. So they started accepting more corporate sponsors, more and more. And then also, there were also more sponsors or more people or boats from the municipalities, and also the firefighters, political parties, so non-commercial parties who really don't have a strong connection with LGBTQIA plus people. So it's definitely an important change. So here you see, for instance, the ING. I think they have had their own boat since 2006, but this is actually a picture of 2008. And of the commercial boats, very often it's the employees who are part of their queer group who are kind of standing there and have an opportunity to shine. If you read the press releases of these organizations, they very often say, like, we think our queer employees are kind of equal, and this is our opportunity to kind of do something special for them. It's an expression of our values. That's why they say they participate in Pride. However, Queer and Pride Amsterdam has kind of a different approach to sponsorship than the Foundation Pride Amsterdam has. And I will talk a little bit more about that later. So that is the kind of encapsulated history of Amsterdam Pride, and I would like to talk a little bit with you now about my own research. I think I'm still kind of on track for time. So let me start briefly with just some theory about pinkwashing. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. So what is pinkwashing? We hear this quite often during Pride. It's when organizations take advocacy for LGBTQIA+ people as a strategic opportunity, more than it's a responsibility to help this particular group. So for them, it's a way to gain a financial or strategic gain. This is at least the definition of zoo, which is one of the most common definitions. However, and very often they also use, there's a lot of different concepts like rainbow washing, pink capitalism, homo capitalism, or gay capitalism. These are all concepts that you mean kind of the same thing, although probably people will not agree with me, but just if we don't focus on the details, they kind of mean the same thing. As a communication scientist, I want to make things more easy to understand, because this to me is a little bit vague, right? So what does it mean using it as an opportunity instead of a responsibility? So in different washing phenomenon, we very often see a corporation is washing where their communication is not in line with their behavior, right? So if you, as the ING, for instance, by having this boat, they're saying, we support LGBTQIA+ people. That is a value that's important to our corporation. If we then hear, if consumers then hear or read that there are LGBTQIA+ employees who are bullied, for instance, and there's nothing being done about that from management, that could be considered a behavior that is not in line with this publicly expressed value, right? So this is what kind of a washing study, or at least a washing phenomenon is. Pinkwashing is usually only used for corporations, but I would like to, or at least if you ask me, I don't think that's right, because governmental organizations can also pinkwash. Actually, the person who termed or who coined this term was an activist who was very critical of the Israeli government when they said, Tel Aviv, look how queer friendly we are here, but at the same time in different spaces they are committing atrocities to queer people, right? So that's also a communication, kind of city marketing that is not in line with their actual behavior. So I think this is, it's important to also kind of use this claim for governmental organizations. This was my research question. I am going to change it because there are kind of two research topics in this data. But at the moment still, has the meaning attributed to Pride Amsterdam, news articles developed through the years, and how has the perception of pinkwashing also changed? I have sampled the articles that are not just about Pride Amsterdam, but also about pinkwashing, and some sort of has something to do about corporate involvement in Pride. So I looked these up via Lexis Uni. They're mainly opinion articles, letters from readers, but also news articles and a lot of interviews, and I analyzed this with thematic analysis. I have some results for you. I have some topics here that are main topics throughout the years, but I don't think that's very interesting, so I just want to skip through here. Maybe which is the period that I selected. So I went from 2006 until 2023. It looks like there is a big spike in 2015, but that's just because Roze Zaterdag was organized again in Amsterdam, so there were a lot more articles there. So the name change, there was a name change where it went from Gay Pride Amsterdam to Pride Amsterdam, because they found it was they wanted a more inclusive name, right? Because it no longer did justice to the participants in Pride. So I thought that's a very interesting point to start. So I wanted to start here during this name change here in 2017. And through the years there were several topics, but I want to focus a little bit here. So when I was reading these newspaper articles, I was really looking for talking about pinkwashing, right? What do people think about pinkwashing? But what I found there was much more than just a discussion about pinkwashing. Mainly you had two groups. The establishment group was kind of the earlier groups who organized Pride. Some of the people who were interviewed there were no longer the organizing party, but they were in some way associated with the early organizations taking care of Pride. They were, for instance, Siep de Haan is interviewed quite often and gives their perspective on Pride Amsterdam. For this establishment group, for them, Pride is a celebration. It is not a demonstration. It is a celebration of rights that have already been achieved. Is it a thanks to the allies who have helped them get here? For them, Pride is for everybody. Because when they started Pride, it wasn't really intended for LGBTQ people specifically. It was more their way to kind of thank everybody in Amsterdam for allowing them to be themselves, right? So that's where they were coming from. For them, because Pride is for everybody, you shouldn't exclude anybody. Also, cisgender, heterosexual people should also be included in the events. Now, they have a more narrow definition of pinkwashing. So if you ask them, they would say, okay, if a corporation is involved in Pride and they have like a pink, like a LGBTQIA plus employee group, and they don't do anything bad, then they're fine, right? If you, for instance, if you give money to a political party that is against queer rights, okay, then you are doing something bad, and I can accuse you of pinkwashing. But it has to be specifically about this topic. So this is I don't know what all this noise is, but yeah. Then we have the challengers. So this is this new group, Queer Amsterdam. They're saying the way Pride has been organized through the years excludes marginalized voices. Because if you say Pride is for everybody, then you are excluding people whose voices need to be more protected. So they wanted to have more separate events, especially for transgender people, but also, for instance, for LGBTQ people of color. So various groups where they wanted to have more separate events for those people. Now, in these interviews, you could see people from the establishment responding kind of to that and saying, yeah, but Pride is for everybody. It should be inclusive. But for the challengers, Pride was so inclusive that it excluded marginalized voices. If you ask the challengers, what is Pride? They wouldn't say Pride is a party or a celebration. They'd say Pride should be a demonstration, because there's lots of rights that still have to be achieved. There's lots of steps that we still have to take. For them, exclusion would be including everybody, right? You have to have the space where people can be heard, and their criticism of the establishment is also, it focused very much on white gay men. And because they're used to having so much space talking in society, because of that, when you, for instance, have the debate night about transgender rights, then they would maybe have too much to say, where the challenger said, you are free to come, but just listen and learn. So here you see kind of a different way of seeing inclusion and exclusion. Now, if you ask the challengers, what is pinkwashing? They have a very broad definition of pinkwashing. First of all, they would say, okay, if you publicly support an LGBTQIA plus group, that is a human rights topic, right? So that means if you show any behavior that is not in line with this human rights topic, with this human rights stance, then you are pinkwashing. So, for instance, Shell had a rainbow flag, and they flipped it upside down because it fitted better with Shell's color. So that's some other thing that's a little weird. But outside of that, they said because Shell has committed atrocities in the Niger Delta, they shouldn't be standing up for LGBTQIA+ rights, because we have an intersectional understanding of pinkwashing. The marginalization of one group can never be viewed separate from different groups, right? So if you want to be a queer activist as a corporation, you better have your ethics in order all around. They also have a very different idea about sponsorship. So the challenger said, you are more than welcome to sponsor us, give us money, that's totally cool. We are all for it. However, Pride is not about you. Pride is about us. So you can sponsor our Pride March, but you cannot show your logo. If they consider that Canal Parade, even if corporations and municipalities do everything right, they show their logo on the boat, they are pinkwashing, because this day is not about you. This month or these weeks is not about you. So this is the main difference between these two groups. And there are two, I think, important points to be made. There is a generational difference between these groups, because the establishment, very often, they're older white people, right? So they are citing in their interviews all the rights progress that have been made since they were born. They were born in a very different world. A lot of the people of the establishment were born in this world of the Amersfoort roze zaterdag, pink Saturday, right? Where if they were kissing on the street, they would risk being hurt, ending up in the hospital. And now that is maybe in some places in the Netherlands still the case, sadly, but in a lot of places it's no longer the same way as it was in the 80s, in the 70s. So this group, the establishment, is citing all these positive changes, and we can be happy now, look at what has happened. But a lot of people who were born since, they say, okay, this has already been the case when I was born, I want more, I see this, this, and this that still needs change. So there's a generational difference. But there's also a thing about gender, of course, because in the challengers there's a lot of transgender people, but also gender non-conforming people who probably have a lot more negative experience in their everyday life due to their gender orientation. Let me see if I'm still, okay. I will move on for time's sake. So, I want to really continue working on this process. Thank you. I want to continue working on this pet project, but I think within this data, I was originally looking for the role of corporations in kind of Pride and how people thought about that. But in the newspaper articles, you have this clear kind of struggle between these two groups. So what I want to do is I want to kind of tweak my search terms so I can focus a little bit less on pinkwashing and more about how these two groups have kind of come to be, and this discursive struggle I think is really interesting. So I want to have like an article that maybe is about the immediate meaning of Pride here in Amsterdam, and maybe also include the data of this year. And have a separate project that's more about the perception of Pride, or organizational engagement and pinkwashing, which could also be, of course, I want to include news articles there, but also press releases and interviews and focus groups. Because a lot of the organizations who are sponsoring Pride, if you ask them, can you send me your press release? They're like, yes, here it is. And do you want to interview us? Like, they're super excited about being part of Pride, and they want to share and kind of show this is why we do it. And I've talked to some of them, and I think it's really easy to be skeptical, because as a, like, commercial corporations are kind of evil. We all know that. But a lot of the people that work in this department that start these campaigns, their opinion is not representative for the corporation as a whole. And most people that I spoke to, really they want to have a positive impact on the lives of LGBTQIA+ people. So I'm really interested to learn more about this. But one more thing that I want to share before I ask you some questions is, as an Amsterdammer, I see the way the city wraps itself in a rainbow, and I see the way the city tries to put itself on the public map, saying we are a queer-friendly place. And in the 90s, when I was growing up, I kind of felt that that was the case. But now I see a lot of elements where I think, just like the UvA, that we have a lot of place to grow as the city of Amsterdam. I'm involved in a research project where we study the inclusive language in municipal documents, but also what they actually do to reach out to these groups. And I can tell you, I wasn't shocked, but I was disappointed how low Amsterdam was on the list. Berlin, Brussels, Stockholm, there were lots of countries who or cities who did so much to try to reach out to LGBTQ people. So my question about Amsterdam really is, does Amsterdam walk the talk? And at this point, I kind of personally say no. So that's also why Loud and Proud to me has a question mark, because I am proud to be an Amsterdammer and I'm very loud about it, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement here, especially in the way LGBTQ people are treated. Now I want to ask you, if you're not willing to share, that's totally fine. Is anybody here would like to share, what does Pride mean to you? Yes.
I think for me, Pride is. So the first time I was ever on a boat, we went through. We went under a bridge and then we came out and everybody was just waving and I think there was, people who show up to Pride parades aren't all gay, so it was kind of, it felt like I could be proud of who I am and people respected me for who I was and I could be myself. I think that's Pride for me. It's being accepted for who you are from people who don't even know you.
Yeah. And that feeling when everybody's cheering for you must be different than, because I think a lot of LGBTQI plus people have very negative experiences. Must be nice to juxtapose kind of this with woohoo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes.
For me, sometimes Pride feels like King's Day.
Oh yeah.
So I live in Amsterdam for many years now, and I don't go to Pride events every year because sometimes I feel it's not for me. It's supposed to be for me, so I'm very happy with Queer Amsterdam that they are organizing. Then I feel seen, but with Pride in general, I don't feel that it's my part to be at. It's straight people's one.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. My mother-in-law is a lesbian woman, and she also kind of says Pride. I think it's nice that Pride is there. But it's not for me because I don't feel represented by kind of this element, but I'm happy that other people are kind of free to feel accepted, like Jessica says. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I can so I think it's a good description of what Pride means to you, because this is also what Pride means to me. And I was a little bit young, a little bit older in 1996, but for me this was, I joined the Pride a few years later, and for me it was incredible because I did not live in Amsterdam at that moment, so I came from outside of the city, and it was so special that you could be gay, that you did not have to hide. And even the years after that, when we started organizing prides in other cities in the Netherlands, so I think this was really for me that. So the party went on and on and on and on, and then it changed. So then it became the party for the straight people, I would say.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning it was not for the straight people. So
So you think it's gone a little bit too far in the other direction? Definitely, it needs to have a little bit more queer focus.
Yeah, I think so, because when I go to the Pride events, I cannot go into my own pub because it's taken over by straight people.
Yeah.
So in a way it's a good thing, but also, it's not a good thing because it's my pub.
Yeah. I have an example maybe that I would like, because it's very relevant to what you are saying now. So I will show a little clip and then I have one other slide that I would like to share with you. This is the documentary Andere Tijden. And like I said, this is about the Amersfoort Pink Saturday. And there were all these locals who were shouting death to gays and la la la. And then you had in this documentary, those people were interviewed. People who were the locals who were shouting, and there were 2 people who were willing to say, I was standing there, I was one of those people. And they were interviewed, but also the organizers of the event. And I want to show just a little clip of this because it's, I think, quite meaningful. So it's in Dutch, but I will translate, or at least describe what's been said afterwards. This is one of the people who is one of the locals in Amersfoort, and this is one of the organizers who also filmed the event.
Ik kom al sinds een paar jaar op de Gay Parade in Amsterdam.
Oh, ga je daar kijken dan?
Dan gaan wij kijken met een hele groep. Vrienden van mij hebben een boot daar. En dan zitten we op de boot en daarna gaan we lekker stappen. Maar ja, deze sfeer is gewoon geweldig.
Ja,
je hebt er niemand geen last en
nee.
alles loopt door elkaar heen. Nou, ik vind het een geweldig evenement.
Ik ga elk jaar naar de Gay Parade.
Wat trek je zo aan die Gay Parade eigenlijk?
Ik vind het heerlijk, ik vind het mooi.
Ja?
Ja, ik vind het echt helemaal gek. Ja, dat moet bijna, zeg maar, nou het is 1 keer per jaar, maar het moet bijna 4 keer per jaar zijn. Om de kwartaal, zeg maar. Ja, vind ik echt leuk. Ja.
Mooi hè? We hebben het goed gedaan joh.
Ja, dat bedoel ik.
35.
So, just to recap what happened here, is these 2 men who were part of the locals who were shouting terrible things, they said, we were just kids. We didn't understand what we were doing. We didn't understand what it meant to be gay. They didn't make any real reparations for what they have done. At least when I'm looking at this this piece of interesting film, then it's clear that they haven't really done any deep introspection, and they're kind of just saying we didn't know any better. But these people now, 40 years later, or 60 years later, no? Yeah, anyway, sometime later, I can't do math in my head, they're coming to Gay Pride each year. They are maybe the people who are in your pub who are like, yay, well, once a year we're going to Gay Pride, and then you're going to go party afterwards. And there's a lot of people there who are what terrible Amsterdammers say, dagjesmensen. So that means people from outside of the cities who dare to come to our city. And so I think this is very interesting that so much has changed in this short period. And the question then like you're saying, Pride is not for these people, right? Because it should be for LGBTQIA plus people, and maybe also allies, but not everybody who kind of wants to come.
Where's the boundary? And I think in a way we also did it ourselves, because I also invited my brother, my sister, my family, my friends, because I could be who I am. So, and I wanted to share that.
Yeah. When I watched this myself, I also kind of thought, why are these people not more critical to their own behavior? Why didn't they learn more? But at the same time, I thought, what if his daughter or son were gay? And then because this person goes to the Gay Pride each year, or maybe transgender or non-binary person, then at least they're exposed to something that's different than their life in Amersfoort. And maybe now Amersfoort is of course not like it was in 1982. But in a way, it can maybe help to go against, you can see that some of the attitudes against LGBTQIA plus people, even in so-called tolerant Netherlands, have becoming more negative. Globally, you see much more vandalism during Pride, right? Because I live in Bos en Lommer, and you have lots of rainbows there too, but the slurs that are written on the rainbows on the ground are horrible. And it's the same way, and I think a lot of other places here, that there's a kind of fatigue with Pride. And especially, I've done a different study that just submitted this week for publications. I'm hoping something comes out of it. But there I analyzed a lot of, like, asked Dutch people, what do you think about participation in Pride? And a lot of them said, I don't understand where there's so much attention to all these alphabet people, meaning LGBTQIA plus people, because when is there attention for us? When is it going to be, well, I cishet day, but they of course didn't say cis, but when is it going to be the day of heterosexuals? I was reading this data thinking like, every day is your day, and you know, but I'm trying to remain an objective scientist. So yeah, I just think this is so fascinating, and I keep thinking more about this. And I have 10 minutes left, and I have one topic that I would like to share with you, one slide. And this could be a little bit controversial, but it happened this year, and I'm very curious what you guys think about it, if you would like to share that. This year we had Queer Amsterdam shared a social media message on Instagram. You could see here that they said, note no Israeli flags allowed when they were doing the Pride walk. And here you can see it a bit bigger, and they also have some other things what you can and cannot do during the Pride walk. They are interviewed later where they apologize for saying not that they don't want any Israeli flags, but they're saying we did not provide any context, and we apologize for that. And they also, they're organizing the Pride Walk together with Gay Monument Amsterdam. So they said, we will no longer organize it. Gay Monument is the only group that will go forward so that people wouldn't boycott it and the event would not be damaged. And Femke Halsema kind of said, this is not acceptable. You cannot exclude people who want to wave an Israeli flag. Because this is also kind of about inclusion, exclusion, who can participate in Pride. Now, considering also where pinkwashing comes from, the Israeli state, who's kind of as a state actor saying, look how queer friendly we are, and that is not really the case. And Queer Amsterdam said we have an intersectional understanding of the way things work. So if they cannot support Israel because of the things they're doing to Palestine, because of the genocide that is happening there. So I find this also another reason why I think Pride is so fascinating, because this is a very sensitive topic. And I'm just very curious what's going to happen next year, because it's not sure still who is going to organize Pride. So considering this is a big thing that happens, I didn't feel like I could have my lecture without having some attention for this. Does anybody have an opinion about it that they would like to share?
Now, I was wondering if the note would have said no Russian flags allowed, if people would have this, if it would be the same discussion, or did all accept like, oh, Russia, well, do we all agree? You know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question.
Yeah, so that's why I felt it's getting a bit too much attention. I enjoy the intersectional approach of Queer Amsterdam. I think it's a really important part, and I'm just kind of sad that they got so much negative press, right? So much negative attention, because I think as an organization, together with Foundation Pride Amsterdam, they have made a very beautiful program. And I think now that there are two groups with a very different background are organizing Pride together, it is a more balanced program than it was when it was just Foundation Pride Amsterdam. Yes?
So what I thought is when I read this, why use the Pride for this statement? So I can imagine the statement, because terrible things are happening there, but it's not like the past years, it was a parade of Israeli flags or something. And why is it okay to bring a Palestinian flag? Because it's also not a heaven for gays in Palestine. And we saw Palestinian flags during the parade.
Sorry, yes?
I commented on this post as well, and they responded to the meeting when they apparently also said to the media the same thing. Where I was saying, I don't understand why you would exclude Israeli flags. I do understand why you would ask people not to carry any other flags that are not related to Pride. You could say, hey, this is a protest walk. Please keep to the subject that we're talking about. but say please, don't force it to somebody. If someone wants to take it because their nationality is Israeli and they want to support that too, then that's fine. But I do agree with the sentiment of let's keep it a little bit focused. Otherwise, a lot of protests have been happening in Amsterdam. A lot of them have been just basically about anything at that point. And I think it's good to keep it focused, but don't say it's all out. That seems weird.
I see other people nodding here too.
Yeah, I understand that they don't want to make it political, but it's just over the statement. So
Yeah.
we're not allowed Israeli flags. They could not allow any flags. Or not make the statements. It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, I think especially because this group has been very much focused on not excluding anybody. I was a little bit surprised to see it there. Well, I'm no fan of the Israeli government, but that does not mean that I think people who have an Israeli passport should be treated in a negative way. So yeah, I'm hoping that they would get past this, because of course next year the municipality still has to decide who is going to organize it, and let's see what happens. I would like to say, as an Amsterdammer, I really hope that these groups together are going to continue bringing us a lively and mixed Pride. I have also recently done some research with, she was a thesis student then, but now she's a PhD student in Munich, Tiziana Schopper. And we did a study about the way consumers, LGBTQIA plus consumers, the way they perceive this type of marketing, right? How does it hit them? And what I thought was a very interesting outcome is a lot of them experience a lot of this Pride activities as a form of marketing, and they felt a bit, how should I say this, it was hurtful for them to see their marginalized identity used by a commercial entity to make money. Because they say every day I experience this and I don't want my identity to be used for commercial purposes. But at the same time, they really felt that Pride and Pride-related activities should go on for people who are coming from a different place than Amsterdam, for people who are not used to seeing people of same sex kissing on the street in the aim of progress, right? Because we, like I said, not just here in Amsterdam, but everywhere, there's still quite some steps to be taken. So I want to end with those sentiments, and let's work all together for a better future. And I want to thank you for your attention.